different tissues of our body, including our skin, and then the different parts of our skin also have their own clocks. So they can also be turned on by different things. So light, feeding, temperature, whether or not you're fasting, that also can impact the clocks.
Welcome to the Learn Skin podcast with me, Dr. Raja.
And me, Dr. Hadar, where we discuss all things skin.
Join us as we delve into the art and science of skin health in today's episode.
Hey, Raja, can you say the thing I told you to tell them?
Of course. We are board-certified dermatologists. This podcast is meant for educational and informational purposes only and is not considered medical advice, nor does it serve as a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. All opinions shared do not express the views of Learn Health, Inc. Let's get to the good stuff.
Hey, Raja, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty well, Hadar. How are you? I've just been thinking, November 5th, time change. What happens to our circadian rhythm when all that stuff happens?
Ooh, yeah. What is happening there? What is this circadian rhythm everybody's talking about? And how does that affect our skin? I mean, should it? Does it? That sounds a little crazy to me. We need an expert, man. We need someone to help us.
Well, we got just the expert. We have Dr. Michelle Jeffries. She is a triple board certified physician because one certification wasn't enough for her.
Exactly.
You could even say maybe quadruple. But anyway, dermatology, pediatric derm, integrative medicine, and she's also a functional medicine certified practitioner. She's been a big supporter of the whole integrative process from the very beginning. She's been at the Integrative Dermatology Symposium multiple times. Michelle, welcome to the podcast, and we're super excited to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I love your little instinctual knowledge about the circadian rhythm changes coming up. That was very insightful. We do have a big time change coming.
Yeah, we call instinct, Google, it's about all the same thing, right?
Exactly. Michelle, what is this circadian rhythm that everybody's talking about? Maybe you can take us through this journey from outside in. So what does that mean? And then how do the cells know the time? I mean, is there like a clock somewhere? Does somebody go around the body and announces, time to wake up? What's happening?
Can I just say, it's about time that we discuss this.
Thank you, Raja.
Oh my goodness, you guys are hilarious. I love it. Yes, the circadian rhythm is one of my most favorite subjects. I'm completely fascinated by it. And the circadian rhythm was developed, by our bodies. Our bodies already know a certain innate rhythm. And it's been discovered by different scientists along the way, and it's been a part of different parts of medicine along the way too. But what the word means, circa means about, and dien means day. So it's all about our daily cycle, the cycle that occurs in 24 hours. And there's all different cyclical changes that happen in our body function, our physiologic changes, our metabolic changes, our behavioral changes. Some of them are on this clock of the 24 hours. And we're not the only organisms that have this clock. Plants have it, bacteria have it, animals have it. And there's also rhythms that are longer than 24 hours, like your pulse, your blood circulation, that occur more than once every 24 hours, your pulse and all of that. And then there's ones that are even longer, like the women's menstrual cycle. And those cycles take longer than 24 hours. So there's all these different rhythms that we naturally have in our body. And what's super cool is that all of our cells are able to tell time. And yes, Hadar, there are clocks.
Oh my gosh, I'm fascinated. Actually thought about it before you go into the clocks and explain what you mean, is that human beings have been fascinated by this forever. We have all these fairy tales about werewolf and Cinderella, and things change with the rhythm of time. And a lot of it actually has to do with the skin change, because that's the external kind of appearance. So obviously the skin is involved. But so pray tell, what is going on with the cells? How do they know the time? How do they know the switch? Are there specific cells involved here?
Yeah, so it's actually every cell in your body can tell time. It's super crazy. When I first came across that data and that information, I was like, wait a second, I can barely tell sometimes what time it is. Sometimes I have a hard time getting places on time. How do my cells have it together and know what's going on? And it's all regulated by this 24-hour clock. And what happens is we perceive daylight through our eyes and light, and that gets processed through our eyes by special cells. And that light gets transferred into different information that goes back into the back of the eye and then travels into the brain to this tiny, tiny, tiny little spot in the back of our brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And this is known as your master clock. Within that clock is just about 10,000 little neurons. And what they're doing is they're keeping track of how much light is coming in and also the lack of light or darkness. And when they get certain signals, they send messages to the rest of your body that it's daylight or it's nighttime. And then all of the trillions of cells in your body, they each have their own clock too. So then they get turned on or turned off depending on what part of day it is. It is absolutely fascinating how this works.
So what about the cells that are like running on Indian Standard Time? Are they always 15 minutes behind? I'm not here to ask any serious questions, by the way, Michelle. I leave it all up to Hadar.
The IST time is a whole separate clock, and it runs about 30 to 60 minutes behind, sometimes 120 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Well, now, actually, to be a little bit more serious, now turning that to the skin, how does the circadian rhythm play in? And is there unique circadian rhythms for, say, the hair or the skin cells, or maybe, our sebaceous glands? I mean, how does that work?
Oh my gosh, it is so cool. So what happens is there's this master clock who does, the most of like, hey, there's light outside or there's dark outside, turn this thing on, turn this thing off. But then the different tissues of our body, including our skin, and then the different parts of our skin also have their own clocks. So they can also be turned on by different things. So light, feeding, temperature, whether or not you're fasting, that also can impact the clocks. So you can think of it as there's going to be certain times a day when our body's going to be optimally functioning, doing certain tasks during the day. And then also biologically, there's going to be certain tasks that are better at night. And our cells know, and the different cell types know what to do when. And so it's all this coordinated orchestra of events that happens throughout the body, and they're all linked together. That skin doesn't work by itself. It's connected to everything else in our body, including how much, as far as blood flow goes to the skin. That doesn't just happen in the skin, that happens throughout our body. How we're processing our nutrients in the gut, how those nutrients get processed, whether we're in this rest or digest and repair and restore, or whether we're in this like activity and exercise phase. So there's all these different influences that can happen, turning on and turning off these various clocks. It's unbelievable. It's mind-blowing, actually.
And so now we understand that this thing, this mechanism, this internal clock is beating in every single one of our cells and every single one of us. The question becomes, who cares, right? I mean, so is that something that affects our health? Do we really need to pay attention to this, or are we just kind of move on with our day?
Right. So, like, what is the day-to-day relevance of this? And the data is coming out so fast. There are so many links that are happening now to when our circadian rhythm is disrupted. We're finding that we're having more issues with sleep disorders, cancer risk, infections, metabolic issues, Alzheimer's, aging. And they actually do research on shift workers, which are people that work at night but are sleeping during the day. So they're kind of the opposite. They're more nocturnal than the people that work during the day. And what they're finding is that their clock genes are chronically out of phase or out of sync and misaligned, and they have a lot more health issues. They're a lot more prone to diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease. So it actually does matter on all those levels.
So Michelle, it's not like it corrects or it flips. It's just off with shift workers. Is that correct?
Right, right. And what's an interesting little variable in there is there are people, there's like something called a chronotype, where there are people that are more night owls and do better at night, and people that are more like the morning larks and do a little bit better during the day. So there's a little bit of genetic variation in how you would adjust. So it's not every shift worker is destined to have all of these issues. If you're more of a night owl, you're probably going to be a little bit more aligned, but you're still going to need to be more aligned with the natural circadian rhythm of the earth, meaning the day and night cycles.
That's fascinating. Now, How can we manipulate this, right? So you've told us that this exists and there are sometimes issues, especially can be exemplified in certain groups of like shift workers. But how can we manipulate this? Because I hear about people who are shining different lights, different lamps, making a point of going outdoors early in the morning so they expose themselves to natural light. Does that matter if you expose yourself to natural light versus light that is created by lamps to simulate natural light?
Absolutely. So you are right on it. So the more that we can align with nature and nature's natural rhythm, the better. So if we're able to, in the morning, get that early morning sunrise light, and I think this is going to be a profound concept for dermatologists, particularly because we're so focused on UV light damage. And so maybe it's not all bad. Maybe there's some healthy light that we actually need. So the light that comes up in the sunrise, the UV index is very, very low. So our risk of getting sun damage during that time is much lower. We also get that natural feeding kind of yellowish, orangish, reddish light from sunrise and sunset. So those might be the times of day where you could get a little bit more natural light. That light's going to go into your eyes and then hit that SCN, your suprachiasmatic nucleus clock, and help you reset all of your other clocks. But you also have to pay attention to the other things that matter too. So, what about eating? There's different clock genes in your gut that are going to feed into your skin cells and all of your other natural rhythms. So, your natural eating cycle has to be aligned too. And then your sleep cycle, we're supposed to have like dimmed light. If you think of if we're back to nature and we were living, a little bit more outdoors and didn't have all the electricity and all of the iPads and iPhones and everything, we'd be living more by firelight or candlelight, that kind of warm amber type of color of light. And if we had more of that in the evening, our body gets the message through our eyes that, hey, it's time to relax, it's time to rest and restore, to repair the body, to detoxify the body. So, dimming the lights, having that, sunset type of light in our homes and not infiltrating our eyes with that daylight or blue light at night is going to help us get into that sleep phase. And when we have that dimmer light in the evening, our brain starts to release melatonin. And melatonin is a fascinating hormone that helps us with sleep, rest, repair, all of those beautiful things. It helps us with our skin. And so having that natural ability to be in natural sunlight is always going to be superior to any artificial lamp that we can create. But there are places like if you're living closer to, Arctic Circle, you're have periods of time of the season where you're not going to get a lot of daylight. And if all you can do are those lamps, then maybe that's a time for that. So great question.
What's really fascinating is that there have been studies looking at topical melatonin for hair growth. And there was a nice systematic review that was done that showed that using about 0.1% topically could support hair growth. But it just speaks to what you're saying. Maybe melatonin isn't just something that we take for sleep, but it's really to address the circadian rhythm, which now I think we're understanding is much bigger than just sleep. It's how we grow, it's how we pause, and it's how all the cells in your body might be functioning.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And thank you, Raja. I wanted to ask you, Michelle. So I've heard all this, and, I'm thinking to myself as you speak, I'm not much of a morning person. You mentioned that there's some variability. How does one find their own kind of circadian rhythm? How do I know what's true? What is really my rhythm versus something that was imposed on me, say, by my parents or the environment I live in? How do we handle that to try to find what circadian rhythm is my own, if such exists?
That is an excellent question. And the ideal scenario to be able to figure that out is to do something in nature for an extended period of time. So, not just one night in nature or one day, but maybe it's like 3 or 4, or maybe a week where you're going camping, where you're out, where you don't bring your devices, you're not on your devices in your tent, you're not having access to Wi Fi, that you do kind of almost detoxify from your life and the natural things that you have to do and all of, the scheduled things that you have to do. And you're out camping and you're waking up with the sunrise and you're going to bed when it's, dark out. You're doing your daytime activities in the middle of the day. And doing that has been shown to help reset or kind of help you align to see what's better for you. There is also, going to a spa vacation or doing something like that, where you're just getting away. You're not having that cortisol and that stress, and you're able to sleep. And there's these whole, sleep retreats that you can do to kind of really be more aligned with your sleep cycle and your wake cycle. So there are those things that exist. In a day-to-day, practical life, it's not so easy to tell. We all have, responsibilities of work and family and, different duties. And so it's sometimes very, very confusing to know, gosh, am I a night person? Or if I just have too much work to do? Or am I not a morning person because I'm just exhausted? But truly, if I took a week off and spent it in the woods, I would become a morning person. So I think it's different for everybody. And if you're able to take the time off to explore it and do that, that's what, vacations are for, right? We're supposed to rest and restore and do things like that.
Well, folks, you heard it here. I'm off. I'll be back in about 3 weeks. And no, I think, some of my professors in medical school would argue that I actually took a lot of sleep retreats during medical school, but we'll leave it for a
It
different
was just
podcast.
your circadian rhythm. It was your chronotype, Hadar. You were the chronotype that didn't study or go to any lectures, my friend.
Exactly. So now I'm going to ask the question that everybody wants to know, because it's nice to go on a retreat, but most of us have to travel for work. A lot of us go different states, go across time zones. Any suggestions there on how to sort of, how should I say this, minimize the impact of this kind of crazy change we are causing our suprachiasmal nucleus?
Great question. So international travel, of course, is that, you travel halfway around the world, you're going to have jet lag. You can even have jet lag just, going from one end of the US to the other as well. And so the best thing that you could do is try to get aligned with the rhythm of the place you are going to. And that's what a lot of the data has shown. Everybody's, obviously going to have their different techniques and hacks that they're going to do, but you want to try to stay awake during the waking hours of your new time zone the best that you can, and go to sleep during the time zones that you're arriving to. You also want to align your feeding when you're eating, when you're exercising, and when you're moving. And sometimes that means that as you're on the plane, traveling 11 hours, instead of sleeping all those 11 hours, depending on what time zone you're going to, paying attention to when you arrive and trying to be awake at when that sunrise would be and try to go to sleep, soon after that sunset. And then planning your meals, a couple of hours apart during that awake time. That's what's worked the best as far as what the data says. I know some people that just sleep the whole way there, and then maybe they have a day or two of jet lag and they're fine. And so that would be, what the data says, but, everybody's going to be a little bit different.
Well, now let's talk about how do you address this from a supplementation standpoint or just from treatment standpoint. So circadian rhythm is really important. You've got someone in front of you, say they've got atopic dermatitis, for example, or maybe psoriasis, where we do know that there's sleep disturbances and whatnot. Or maybe even I can ask it generally, any inflammatory condition. How do you approach the circadian rhythm aspect of things when you're putting together a treatment?
Yeah, so if we're just focusing on sleep and helping them, get to sleep, it's about, what is the sleep environment that they're creating. So you want to be sure that you're not getting a lot of light from devices and things like that an hour or two before you go to bed. You also want to make sure that you haven't eaten a big meal, right, about an hour or two before you go to bed so that your body's still not trying to process through all of that food. And then supplements, there's some supplements that can help, things like magnesium, CBD, GABA, glycine. Also some herbal teas that help calm, like chamomile teas, lemon balm, valerian root, lavender, passion flower. Things like that can also help. And then the temperature of your room. The temperature is also a trigger of circadian rhythms. And so making sure you're decreasing the temperature of the bedroom. And then you also want to plan your sleep to make sure that you are getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So you want to almost figure out what time do you have to wake up, then backlog 7 to 8 hours. Well, that's what time I should be going to sleep. And then an hour or two before that, well, that's when I should be getting off my devices. I should stop eating before then. I should make sure that I'm dimming the lights in my home. Try to cover, like your alarm clock light and the TV light if you have a TV in your room, and calm everything. And then also there's some fascinating data about the skin and what it does at night. It's actually more leaky at night. And so we lose a lot of our skin hydration at night. So making sure that we're moisturizing a lot at night. There's different genes that are turned on that make our skin more porous at night. So optimizing that. Also, we get a lot of blood flow at night too. So our body's in the process of being ready to detoxify and heal. And so repairing all that sun damage from the day if you've had some too. And also those inflammatory cytokines do peak at night. So using your topical medications and anti-inflammatories at night is going to be a really good time to help your body rest and restore and heal, especially with an inflammatory skin condition. So starting there would be a great place to reset things. And then making sure when you wake up, you do try to see the sunrise if you can. There's a lot of data of people who are seeing sunrise in the morning and resetting their clock. They're getting more restful sleep that next following night. So sometimes it's not what you do at night, it's what you're doing that next morning that matters.
Well, folks, you heard it here. My circadian clock says we got to finish this recording. However, I just want to hear more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to...
You just need more melatonin, Hadar.
I know. I'm going to set my clock to go to the IDS because I know, Michelle, you're going to be there talking about circadian rhythm. And so we can all learn more and kind of really dig into those mechanisms you just illustrated right now. Folks, you set your own clock, and who knows, maybe you get to see the sunrise at Reno all together, and we can all reset together. Michelle, thank you so much. This has been fascinating. I'm going to go read so much about circadian rhythm. I'm going to get a really good night's sleep from that one. So thank you. Thank you for your time, for your expertise, and I'll see you in Reno.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure.
Guess what, Hadar?
What?
Tickets are selling fast for the 6th Annual Integrative Dermatology Symposium.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, each year this event gets better and better.
Yes, it does. And as a special gift to our podcast listeners, we're offering 15% off registration using the code PODCAST15.
Wow, that's a great deal. And prices won't be going any lower this year, so best to get on it now.
So true. And if you haven't joined us in person yet, this is the year to come have fun at the Grand Casino Resort in Reno, Nevada.
Yep, you'll get to connect with practitioners, engage with exciting research and content, and learn what the integrative movement is all about. Now, all this while nestled between the Sierra Nevada mountain range and downtown Reno.
All that nestling sounds skin-tastic. I know we're all about having fun at the symposium, but this year is over the top. Now look, I'm not much of a golfer, but they have over 40 courses along with rock climbing, equestrian trails, boat tours to Tahoe, pools, arcades. You get the picture, so much more.
Yes, it's definitely a family-friendly getaway. And while they are at the movies, we'll be feasting on, well, no pun intended, but nutrition.
My appetite is whetted. This year's theme has been long awaited. Nourish the gut, nourish the skin as we delve into nutrition.
We can't wait to see you this October 27th through the 29th in person or virtually.